Hello.
Hello.
Welcome to episode 10 of the Cancer Sisters podcast. I'm Nicole,
And I'm Amanda.
and this is Instant Friends, Just Add Water.
Such a perfect title.
Yes, we're going to have such a fun and interesting conversation with our new friend who lives in Eastern Washington.
Yeah, so we had to do a little bit of a different recording. We did it over the phone and with different time zones. Really excited for you guys to hear from her and hear her story. And we laugh a lot too, of course. So
And
with that,
let's get started.
okay. Hello.
Hi. Hi.
How's it going?
Oh, life is
How have
good.
you been? Oh, good. We like that.
Yeah. My urologist called today to say that I don't have cancer in my bladder, so it's a good day.
That's amazing.
That is a good day. I recently found out I have a clean anus.
Yay!
Stop saying it like that.
I know. I like how those words just roll together. It's a clean anus. And you have a bladder.
Bladder. It's fabulous.
We like that.
Well, and my oncologist today said that I was in the green. That's a new phrase that I
catchphrase.
learned. But
In the green.
means it sounds better than saying stable,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah, green is like all systems go. Congratulations.
Thanks. I like my new favorite color.
We like good news. Well,
Yeah.
thanks for joining us. This has been a few weeks in the making, and we're very excited to have you on. And I think what is so exciting is how, first of all, how you connected with Amanda and how, we ended up having so much in common with with our clean body parts. I mean, who?
I mean, podcast over. We don't have to talk about anything else.
It's amazing, this little club that nobody wants to belong to, how many connections you find out there are when you join it.
So true. Yeah.
The club that nobody wants to belong to. I think that should be the title of this episode.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it just to remind our listeners, speaking of club, we're in a club that is women swim coaches, and that's how I found you. After you posted your blog in our Facebook group. So I think that's really cool. I took a chance just to reach out, and in our last conversation, it was just so much fun, even though we're talking about such a blah,
such an unfun topic, but
yeah.
Yeah, and I really, one of the first blogs I wrote in my little Substack account was about how swimmers are my people. And
Yes.
I just feel like you start talking to somebody else who gets swimming, and like you could just, finish that conversation and keep going on to lunch, and then suddenly it's afternoon, and then there you are, eating dinner together.
Absolutely. Yeah, the swimmers are our people.
We're a strange group, so we get each other. Well, Leslie, we are so interested in your story, where where it began, and then how you ended up blogging and swimming and coaching and all of that. So, do you want to tell us a little bit about your diagnosis, and you jumped right to the healthy bladder. So what's in between?
Sure. I started thinking about this, and I realized I need to actually lay a little groundwork. So in my work, I did crisis management, and pretty heavy duty crisis, like where people die from the product that my company sells. And
Wow.
yeah, and there was a series of really bad Northern California wildfires in October of 20. And I became the person at my company to answer all of the discovery and data request questions. And, I had a team of about 70 or 80 people working for me on it. But it was really high stakes, and it was really sad because in some cases we were responsible and many we weren't, but people died as a direct result of our product. And then
Wow.
in November of 2018, another fire happened in a place that I had actually worked in Paradise, California, ironically named.
Mhm.
And it was called the Camp Fire, and it burned down the entire town.
Wow.
85 or so people lost their lives. Like, it was bad.
Oh my goodness.
And I went into the end of that year telling myself, if I can make it through next year, I don't have to work the whole year. I had lots of vacations. I will take 6 weeks of vacation off at the end of 2019. And then in January of 2019, when I went back full throttle here, I mean, I still haven't taken the 6-week vacation, right? But now we're like campfire, October 2017 fires, we're just working, working, working. My mom gets diagnosed with breast cancer.
Mm.
And I went through treatment with her, and her oncologist was very uncurious, as was her surgeon. And it actually may have been stage 4 when they caught it. It could have just been stage 3, but ultimately she ended up dying in July of 2021. And
That was fast.
yeah, so in January of 2020, my mom thought she was in the clear. She was done with treatment. I had gone up and done all her treatments with her, and I found a lump in my breast, just almost like exactly a year later. And it was huge. It was like a big lump. It was somewhere between 5 or 6 centimeters, which
Mm.
I never really tuned into what a centimeter was until they said that to me. And then I got the ruler out and I went, oh, that's kind of a lot.
Yeah.
Yes, and you figure it out. What is yeah.
So it was there probably, and you were not getting mammograms, or you were not doing self exams.
Oh, absolutely not. I was
Yeah.
way too important and busy.
Right.
I had all this important stuff I had to do, and all these people who needed help to get it
Mhm.
done right. And also, interestingly, and I haven't written about this yet in my blog, but my grandmother was raised as a Christian Scientist. Her mother had left the Catholic Church because it was too fire and brimstone for her. And in the Christian Science religion, you don't talk about health ailments. And, if you're connected with God, then life is good. Like, you can leave your body and just have you can live on the spiritual plane. And in theory, that may be true. I don't know. I haven't practiced it. But in reality, uh, some things happen and you really need to deal with them. And so I think part of it was, I came from this long line of healthy people. Like, my grandmother was 100 at the time that I was going through breast cancer treatment with my mom.
Oh my goodness.
Right?
Wow.
And a
Yeah.
Christian Scientist. So, like, she
Wow.
never went to the doctor.
Oh
She
my
was
gosh.
100. So I'm like, okay, this mom getting cancer was a total fluke. Like, this would never happen to me. Right? I
Right.
don't know.
Right.
Did you ever have that idea, like, that cancer is for other people?
Oh, 100%. And
Yeah.
I mean, I never gave it a thought. I don't know, did you?
Before having cancer, no.
Yeah.
And that, one of the things that I often think about is, if in telling my own story and telling people about the my incidences of cancer
Right.
and the kind of treatment I've had, and what I've endured, I still don't think of myself as the sick person who's had cancer 3 different times.
Right. Right.
I still have this strange sense of invincibility, and it's not healthy. But no, I mean, no, never thought we were sick.
Yeah.
That it was coming for us. And our dad even had kidney cancer, but he had he had one kidney removed, and then went
Hmm.
on to be very, you know very active and healthy for for quite a while.
Played golf
But
every
it
day.
just
I mean, he just, yeah. And so our experiences were, and when, and with mom's cancer, and they got it, and
melanoma.
she moved on, right? And
Mm-hmm.
and everybody was fine. So you don't have to think about it again. And that's what we want, because nobody wants to spend time thinking of
Right. It was kind of
what could happen.
right. And
Yeah.
with our dad, it was kind of, oh, someday maybe I should have an ultrasound of my kidneys. Just
Right.
maybe. I
Yeah,
should have a baseline someday. But it wasn't urgent.
No,
right.
it wasn't.
And the same thing happened with my mom. You know, she got the breast cancer, and I was like, oh, yeah, I had a mammogram 5 years ago. I'm good.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm good.
Can
So
I just
you
say right now and here,
yeah.
if there's anybody listening to this podcast who has not gone in to have a mammogram, do not take my approach with your mammograms and do the self. Oh my gosh, how easy is a self inspection,
Yeah.
a self exam? I wasn't
Right.
even doing that. Like, so stupid. But I'm here now, and
Yeah.
yeah. So
And
anyway,
you can recommend to people to do those self exams and to go to your mammogram.
yep.
So you found the rather large lump. Who did you go to first, or did they send you to get a mammogram right away, or what was the
Yeah. So the first thing I did was I went downstairs and I said to my husband, I need you to come and feel my breast for me. And he goes, oh, okay.
Right.
I said, no,
Of
honey,
course.
not that kind of party, hun?
no. And he felt it, and immediately he got this look on his face, and he said, I think you need to go get that checked out. Like he was scared. And that scared me. So, I went to Kaiser in Oakland, which is where we were living. We were living in Berkeley at the time. And I went in and I said, I need a mammogram. And I think I have a lump in my breast. And so I think we need to figure out what it is. And they're like, well, you can't get the diagnostic mammogram until you get the regular mammogram. And we can't do it for another day or two. We're booked. And, I'm freaking out.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so that was my first introduction to the medical community moves at a different pace than your desire or need for them to move sometimes.
Oh yes.
That was a big aha. And all the gatekeepers at the front desks, their job is just to manage the schedule. Like, they don't really, they're not hearing the desperation in people's voices. They're just like, oh, well, we don't have any openings until Thursday, So anyway, I finally got the diagnostic mammogram, and I was putting my clothes on, and the technician who had done it said, oh, I'd like to take you down the hall. And that, I had only had that one other mammogram 5 years before, and nobody had taken me down the hall. And I still was not connecting the dots,
Oh my
right?
gosh.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And I get into, I'm thinking something's really wrong, but I'm not thinking, oh, they're going to tell me right now that I have cancer. So office, it's a windowless office. It has a round table and a little desk. And there's a nice nurse in there with this really cushy, beautiful bosom. I found out was cushy and beautiful because I cried into it for about 10 minutes
Oh my gosh.
after she told me that while they didn't know what, I definitely had breast cancer, and I shouldn't leave there with any false.
Dinner's ready.
I apologize for that.
That's awesome.
We have a paging system in our house. Well, part of the live recording. Sorry, dinner. It's a good dinner too. But
dinner time, everybody.
Anyway, she said, "Don't think that this isn't cancer. We'll figure out what's going on, but I want you to leave here knowing that you have cancer." And then she just promptly handed me the box of tissue and let me cry all over her, which was the sweetest thing, honestly, that happened to me probably in my entire treatment. Like, she just She was right there. And I was like, do you do this all the time? And she said, yes.
Oh my gosh. You got to
No,
be
but it's
thankful for a
such
person like that,
such
for
lovely
sure.
compassion,
Yeah.
though.
Who can bring that same level of compassion to work every day? You know?
That's wow. I mean, that's hard.
I can't even imagine having that job. And, you know, and from there, they sent me to the surgeon, and the surgeon, I love the cancer board or the tumor board, they call it.
Oh yeah.
Um, yeah, that's a pretty kick-ass concept. And I was a little bit familiar with it from my mom, but not really. And so, you know, they all talked about my case and they looked at my scan. We were doing all this scanning and stuff. And they said, well, we really think you should do chemo first. And we should see if we can shrink the tumor. And so that's what we did, which I
Mhm.
think was a really good call. But in retrospect, here are two things that are kind of like, oh, good to know. One, the NIH, the National Institute of Health, is
Mhm.
now, some of their researchers are now thinking that if you do chemo before surgery, that increases your chances of getting lymphedema, which I have in my left arm.
No kidding.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
And um, we shrunk the tumor so effectively that there was nothing left for them when they got to surgery. And so now that they have this better way of typing the cancer, and you can tell just how estrogen expressive it is versus just how HER2 positive it is. I'm what's called triple positive in the breast cancer parlance.
Mm-hmm.
And now they can really see what's going on and they can target the drugs. And because there was nothing left and there wasn't enough tissue in the biopsy, I don't get to know just how HER2 positive I was versus estrogen positive. And so I'm on two long-term, pretty heavy duty drugs, one that deals with estrogen and one that deals with HER2. Um,
Oh,
so, you know, there's
it's
just a lot you don't know when you go in.
exactly. It's like that is it is the good and the bad
Mhm.
because the tumor shrunk so they couldn't accurately diagnose, but now you're left with those with two medicines.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
yeah.
And they both cause hot flashes. It's tamoxifen and something called Herceptin. And the Herceptin, they inject into my leg every 3 weeks. And it kind of feels like somebody has an icy dagger that's jagged and they shove it into your leg. And
How pleasant for you.
and
Oh
my
my gosh.
infusion center is this long row of chairs. You know, it's just one room.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no like really private infusion rooms. And so I try to sit like as far away from people as I can, but basically like I am really trying hard not to just scream.
Just
You know?
wail.
And when
They're
I do,
stabbing me.
we all laugh about it. And I just apologize to the poor people who are trying to do their chemo in peace, you know?
Right.
Yeah. Anyway, they're kind of tough drugs. I have a slightly suppressed immune system, so I don't have my full complete complement of red blood cells, platelets, white blood cells,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm pretty close. Like I'm close enough that I can you know live a fairly normal life, but like it's hard to be an endurance athlete, you know.
Certainly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So what
that's
are
where
what's the immediate besides the icy stabbing pain, what's the immediate side effect from that every few weeks injection?
well, you know, I think because I'm talking to you guys, it's very appropriate that I go back to the butt.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it gives you, it constipates you and gives you hemorrhoids. Like
Oh no.
really, it's like, but there's this point on the top of your head, you know, that the soft point in the back of your head, you know,
Mm-hmm.
where there's like a little indentation almost before the curve, but
Hmm.
at the back in the middle.
Yeah.
That point is, I think, called dew point 20 in acupuncture. And if you get somebody to put a needle at the top of that point for, I don't know, 20 minutes every 10 days or so, no hemorrhoids and no constipation.
Well, that is fascinating. So I imagine that's your path then. After the injection, you do see an acupuncturist. Is that what you're telling us?
I love my acupuncturist. And the other thing that she does to get rid of the heat, because really, in Western medicine, this is the way the Chinese medicine people will talk about it, and the Japanese medicine people too. In
Mhm.
Western medicine, we fight fire with fire. So cancer is inflammation, and then we inject you with fire to fight the fire. And in Chinese medicine or Japanese medicine and traditional acupuncture, they like to dampen the fire. They like to put water on the fire. And I'm a right? Like
Right.
swimming, right? Water person. So I really like this idea of dampening and cooling toxic heat. I think that works for me. So I eat a lot of watermelon, which is also a Chinese thing. And my acupuncturist does this little scoring on my back with some tool that opens up the skin, but not like so that I have a skin. And then she
Mhm.
puts these cups on the back, which we or so we saw all the Olympic athletes at Rio with
Oh,
those,
right.
right?
The cupping
It's
bruises.
that Yeah, it's that cupping. And then we literally pull out blood. It's like having like leeches, except it's, more modern. And and it works. It really works. It really helps to reduce the toxic heat. So, you
Did
know,
did someone
yeah,
suggest that to you, or were you already into acupuncture, and you were already working with somebody before the diagnosis, or did somebody suggest it to you after?
as a swimmer, I had been doing acupuncture and massage with this amazing person for, I don't know, maybe like 7 years. And I'd go in and she'd just, get me all fixed up. And then, of course, there was the pandemic. And right before I got diagnosed, she left her acupuncture practice to go to medical school in the Bahamas or something like Trinidad and Tobago or
Mm-hmm.
somewhere really far away.
Yeah.
And so I finally worked up the courage. I didn't want to tell her that I had cancer. I finally worked up the courage to tell her that I had it. And she sent me to her mentor who specializes in acupuncture for women with breast cancer. How lucky is that?
No kidding. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, that's an interesting connection. I think that's quite lovely.
Yeah. It really has worked out well for me. And then part of it is just really having super clean diet and getting a lot of like naps and sleeping, and I'm not working. And so, in one of my blogs recently, I wrote about this concept of making room.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea is that you don't fit it in, but you actually assess what you need to get rid of. And so in my case, it was work. I got rid of work and
Mm-hmm.
replaced it with naps and
I,
acupuncture.
I like that for you. Well,
Good
it
luck.
sounds like, I mean, in charge of 70 or so people, and you were doing the damage control and the writing and the communication for really disastrous and intense things. I can imagine that that was a really high stress position for you.
Yeah, it's really. And I realized, I had I guess redesigned our emergency management program and modernized it. And I built an emergency operations center for our company. And this was and in 2010, it was put to the test when we had a pipeline explosion in the city of San Bruno, and 153 houses were damaged and 8 people died. And I realized going into 2019, after the campfire happened in November of 2018 in a town that I loved and had worked in, that I was still carrying the dead people, the people who had died in the San Bruno pipeline explosion, on my back.
Oh my.
And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it was pretty intense. And I remember I got to that 6 week, break. Finally, my mom was cured from cancer. I'm taking my 6 weeks off work. I'm going to really be all about myself and do things for myself. And I remember telling my husband, I just feel so guilty. And there are who have worked on all of those horrible events, and we have similar feelings.
Mm-hmm.
And my husband said, honey, you're not the one who's responsible for that pipeline explosion. I wasn't operating the pipeline.
Mm-hmm.
It turned
Right.
out that there was an overpressure that somebody had done, and I didn't do that. It wasn't me. And then he took this bag of grated Parmesan cheese that was on the table that night for dinner, and he threw it from our dining room into the kitchen, and it
Mm-hmm.
landed on the floor with it and burst open. And I looked at him. I said, "What are you doing?" And he goes, "You didn't throw the parm, did you?" And I said, "No, I didn't throw the parm. I didn't make that
Yeah.
mess." And he goes, "Exactly." Exactly.
Oh my goodness.
And so that was the beginning of my healing journey. And I really am feeling now much less emotionally involved and engaged and overwhelmed by all that tragedy. I do feel like it's more in the rearview mirror now than it ever
Mm-hmm.
has been, which is good and healthy, I think.
Yes, that sounds good and healthy because for your of course for your mental well-being, but for your physical health, you can't hang on to guilt of any kind, really, even especially when it's not yours.
Hmm.
And yeah, I have to imagine that was that was quite a turning point and really a lighter moment for you. Did you start writing about the same time? Writing for
Well,
yourself, I mean.
yeah. The best thing I ever wrote was in, I want to say like 2013. I wrote for SVPs on best practices in the how best practices work, what one is, and how to implement them. And it
Mhm.
was literally something that it just flew out of me. And it was the first time at work, honestly, that something had just come out almost perfect the way it was written. And it was just because it was something I knew so much about. And
Mhm.
I realized, like, I really like writing. I like writing when it's me. And this just happened to be an assignment. Writing
Right, that
about
was yours.
writing about wind velocity, in a canyon is not my subject matter expertise. And so you have to learn a lot before you can write. And then even then you have to really choose your words carefully. So um I didn't write until I got the diagnosis, and then I was not working. And every time they would give you what I called uh, mega meta death, which is dexamethasone,
Mm.
right? The
Oh,
steroid before chemo.
yeah.
Have you guys had that?
Amanda had to have it because I had chemotherapy, but it was a pill form. And so after her metastasis, she did. She had just, the pills and the infusions and all the stuff to help bolster you up so you could handle the infusion of the actual chemotherapy.
The onslaught. And
The
so, Amanda,
onslaught, yes.
yeah, Amanda, were you like, did you have a lot of energy on those nights that you had to take the pills?
Absolutely. It's
Yeah.
such it's a strange reality to have all that that energy. I felt so strong, like I could start lifting weights and then
Totally. So that's what happened to me. And I had seen my mom go through this. We came back from chemo. They had a new neighbor, and the new neighbor hadn't seen her place. They lived in a retirement community. And she was like, "Come on in. Let me give you a tour." She's like, "We just have ended 6 hours of infusions. I'm like, "Mom, I really think we should relax." So I knew what I was headed into. And that's when I started writing. And the first thing I wrote was a perspective. My local radio station, my local NPR station, KQED, had this thing called With a Perspective. And you could record, I think it was like a 2-minute piece. and they would play it on the radio. And that's unfortunately how many of my friends found out that I had cancer.
No
Oops.
kidding.
But I wrote this piece about the will to live and wanting to live and being in such a strange time with the pandemic and all my neighbors asking if there was anything they could do. And, the only thing I wanted was my life. Like but I took the masks and I took the food help and I took the groceries but what I really wanted was to live. That was a tough time. And that was the first piece I wrote, and it was good. It was really good. And that's when I realized I have stories. And so every time I got Dexamegadeath or whatever,
Megadeth. And the energy to sit down and tell a story.
Yep. And that's when I started writing. And then I stopped. We moved. I tried to go back to work. Things happened. I have a teenager, it's like, and then all of a sudden, at near like October of last year, I realized, oh my gosh, I have space on Friday afternoons, just completely wide open space. And I have taken enough naps and I have done enough meditation and I have lied on the floor for long enough. And, I just have more energy. I think I could fill that space with writing. And I really want to share with people what I have learned. And so I met with a girlfriend of mine who has a master's degree in creative nonfiction. And I said, tell me a little bit about this writing thing. And then I talked to a few different people about where to publish. And she was the one actually who had said, you should publish on Substack. It's ad free. It's an easy format. And so I decided, okay,
cool.
At the beginning of the year, that's what I'm going to do. And so this year I started, and I've been publishing once a week. And just today, this was like the high point of my publishing career. Are you ready?
Yes.
I got a comment from a woman who is a breast cancer survivor and has had lymphedema for the last 2 years and thanked me for sharing what I have learned.
That's amazing. That's amazing because there has to be plenty of people interacting and reading. And I have to tell you, I think you are just a beautiful writer. I mean, creative nonfiction is its own unique genre, but as an English teacher, I just it's so ridiculous. I think I could be, it's just a human being, but as an English teacher, I just appreciate your language, your such specific word choice, and your comparisons, your analogies. I'm like, yes, it speaks to me. It makes so much sense. And so
Wow.
I was
Thank
like,
you.
I'm such a dork. I'm like, this writing is so good.
Well, it's really funny because in my last blog, I thanked Mrs. Dix, Mrs. Cox and Mrs. Phillips. I should have thanked them too. But Mrs. Dix was my debate coach. She was an English teacher at my high school, and she's gone now. But she really taught me how to do research, and she was formative in helping me to think about structuring my writing more than the actual writing itself, but structuring it.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that, those English, Mrs. Cox in 6th grade taught me how to write a paragraph. Mrs. Phillips taught me how to write a 5-paragraph essay. And Mrs. Dix taught me how to write stuff that was supported in real life with real world evidence. And I'm just really grateful for my English teachers, and I'm grateful for you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I'm teaching my students to write in a different way in these last few weeks, and I kind of want to hit my head against the wall. So that's a nice.
You just don't know, it's like the work that you do as an English teacher, it is like seed sowing, and some seeds take 10 years to germinate and some take 15 and some don't germinate for 200 years. Like, it's crazy, right? There has to be a fire and a certain amount of rain at the right time. And, it's like you're out there sowing all these seeds, and that must be a little bit of a hard job because, you know, all you see is the frustration in the moment, but you
Mm-hmm.
don't see that light bulb that goes off when that 27-year-old says, oh, you know, this is what she meant.
Yeah. It'll be important sometime. I know that. It'll be important sometime.
It will.
More than, more than just this essay, but um I do actually love teaching writing. I don't very much enjoy grading it, but I do love the writing process, so that's great. So you're so cancer and swimming,
Mm-hmm.
the name of your podcast. Let's well I want to hear I do want to talk about swimming. Um, I know Amanda especially wants you to talk about swimming, but can we go back a little bit from chemo first?
Mm-hmm.
Then you said you were moving, you tried to work again. What happened then that sort of put you where you are now, not working with acupuncture and meditation and naps?
And that sounds like such an ideal life.
It does. I love it. Yes.
Yeah.
If it weren't for the cancer, it would be an ideal life.
So, yeah. Oh my gosh. So in August of 2020, I had finished my mastectomy. I was recovering from my mastectomy and I was going to go into radiation. And California had another series of wildfires come through. It was more in Northern California and
Mm-hmm.
maybe even Oregon. And there was a 30-day period in Berkeley, which has really usually very lovely air and there was a heat wave and none of the houses have air conditioning, right? So you're in this 86 degrees and you're on fire because you're taking these post chemo drugs, but chemo also made you on fire, so you're just hot all the
Right.
time. The house is hot. And then these fires came through and there were 30 days in between September and October and August where you couldn't go outside without wearing an N95 mask. And
Oh,
inside was inhospitable because it was 86 degrees that and the house never really cooled off. Maybe it took like 3 weeks and the house finally cooled off. And so there I was stuck in this sardine tin in Berkeley.
yes. Inferno.
Yeah, no,
Oh,
I mean, it was just, and the one respite that you had from this constant N95 wearing was going outside and going for walks with friends. I had been using a friend's swimming pool. I drove 25 minutes to her house and to swim in it because the public pools were closed. A neighbor cut a hole in the fence to the local swimming pool and took me on a midnight swim one night in her,
oh, that's
that
fantastic.
was really fun. And,
Yes.
I had been doing things like that to just keep my sanity. And then suddenly the outdoors was no longer, it's hard to swim with an N95 mask on. I think Amanda could validate that.
I think so.
So, so that was really, it's like no swimming. It's horrible. I loved my house, but it felt really small. I was sharing my bathroom with my 14-year-old.
Mm,
Yeah. And the
always.
man and the man next door, I would visit with my friends on the front porch and they would sit on my driveway and his driveway was right next to our driveway and there was no like visual buffer between them. And our
Mm-hmm.
porches in these 1920s bungalows were eyeball to eyeball. And he would sit on his porch in his terry cloth blue man dress that he never changed
Oh no.
and listen to like fire and brimstone male religious radio people, talking like
I
uh,
can't. This doesn't sound real. But
eating canned peaches, right? So that's my view on my right. Then our neighbor's kitty corner behind us, which our lot was 120 feet deep total. So, you're like 60 feet away from them. They
mhm.
rebuilt their entire back shed thing. And then some other neighbors of ours decided that it was time to redo some retaining walls. So they brought in a crew who spent a week and a half doing jackhammering and then pouring concrete for like 4 days or something. And then somebody else added a second story on their house. And then there was constant tree trimming because everybody was worried about fires. And then, and then there's just the usual stuff like the UPS truck. And in our street, the garbage truck came 3 times. First, there was a truck to pick up the garbage. Then there was a truck to pick up the green waste. And then there was a truck to pick up the recycling.
Oh, the noise.
And then 2 of our neighbors, one behind us and one 2 doors over, got pandemic dogs. And I will just
Oh,
say
yeah.
about these dogs that it was not their failure to thrive on the farm that sent them to the pound for adoption.
Oh, enough said. It's just a cacophony of
It was
oh.
it was horrible. Like there was, and we had been looking here in beautiful Eastern Washington 5 or 7 years trying to figure out like, should we move? I have family here on my husband's side. And after I got the clean PET scan in October, so I went through radiation. I was going through radiation on my back that had been in my back. And this house that had been on the market for 2 years, people here tend to price their houses like way to sell for in hopes that some stupid person from California will come along and buy it.
Yeah.
And so this house had been sitting and sitting and sitting, and they just sheared off a huge amount of asking on it. They were just really finally ready to sell. And I showed it to my husband online. I said, "What do you think?" And he said, "I really like that house." So we sent my sister-in-law, who lives here, to look at it. And I asked her 2 questions. I said, 1, can we make it homey? And 2, does it smell? And she said, "Yes, you can make it homey, and no, it doesn't smell." And so I said, "Okay, great."
So you saw the house by proxy. That's pretty great.
Classic pandemic story, right?
Yes, yes.
And we bought the house. And then I of course was just completely gassed. And I think, based on the conversation we had before this blog, before this podcast, I think you two have been there also, where you just can't move.
Just can't do anymore. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's
yeah, I found a favorite spot on the couch. I'd go to radiation. I'd come home. I'd take a nap.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Then maybe I'd have something to eat, and then I'd take a nap.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really in the blog I wrote about making room. I said during cancer treatment, really, during chemo, there's only one room, and during radiation, there's only one room, and that's the bedroom in the bed. You're just so freaking tired. So my dear husband packed up our entire house in 6 weeks, 30 years on the same street in 2 different houses, but 30 years, like it was, and got us completely packed up. And we moved on December 20th of 2020. And
wow.
Yeah. And then the pool reopened in April of 2021. And I thought, probably aren't a whole lot of people swimming. And even if there are, I think it's worth the risk because I need swimming. I cannot live. I had lived for 4 months now with no swimming at all. And it was just killing me. There are you don't want to swim in an outdoor pool in Eastern Washington in the wintertime.
Right.
Yeah, no thanks.
That was a little bit of a shock.
Well, we have had such a great conversation, but it is time for us to part.
Yes, we're going to save the rest for part 2 so we can make sure you get all the great information and all the laughs.
All the laughs, all the excellent storytelling. So next week, part 2 of Instant Friends. Just add water. Until next time.
Thanks for listening.
Bye.
Bye.